poll today, and I mentioned this earlier, but let's do it with China with this important meeting on the 15th. Does anybody really care about foreign policy, or is that the province of people like you?
Well, the President of the United States certainly does, and it means he has to use a lot of capital on it. I mean, these are things potentially are not top of mind for the American people, but the President is also dealing with issues that he necessarily didn't run on, issues that he has to deal with. Obviously, two massive conflicts happening right now in the world, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what's going on in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. We should note, when you look at China, it is not just this concern about economics or potentially whether or not what the future holds for China. And are they going to invade Taiwan? But the fact of the matter is, the United States and China are on opposite ends of both of these conflicts. So you see a real power struggle right now. And I think that is why the global community, even if Americans aren't paying attention to it, leaders around the world want to see these two countries, even though Jonathan said earlier, there really is no deliverable, but they want to see the dialogue between President Joe Biden and Xi Jinping.
Emery, I believe the president of China will fly back and the government won't be shut down 2 days later. Is the President of the United States going to fly across the country to a November 17th shutdown?
Well, I guess that's why Xi Jinping has his central planning. Well, listen, President Biden should be back in time for this deadline. Remember, the government shuts down 12:01 a.m. Saturday, November 18th morning. So they have all of next week to figure it out. Potentially, we're going to get a text before this weekend, or at least by before the end of the weekend is up, about what Speaker Mike Johnson plans to do when it comes to keeping the government open. Is it going to be a clean CR? He's floated potentially a CR, a continuing resolution, to keep the government funded till next January 15th or April 15th, or there's going to be this laddered approach, which some lawmakers I talked to are struggling to even understand what that means, but basically having multiple fiscal cliffs, keeping some agencies open and having different due dates. But we'll see how the Republicans plan in the House of Representatives to get this through. Speaker Johnson said he does not want to shut down, but remember, this is what cost Speaker Kevin McCarthy his job.
Anne-Marie, I want to stick on what we're looking at internationally with respect to the Xi Jinping President Biden meeting. You were talking about how some of the conflicts, Ukraine, as well as the Hamas-Israel war, have heightened awareness of an increasing closeness with China and Russia and Iran. How realistic, how close are some of these ties becoming as these conflicts escalate?
Well, I think these ties are very close. I mean, look at the drones that Russia is using in Ukraine. These are Shahad drones coming from Iran. This is something that the administration wanted to put a lot of pressure to stop. China and Xi Jinping has a lot of power in these conflicts. He can really put his thumb on the scale and put some weight and pressure on President Putin and Iran to honestly hold back and to stop some of this. But China, for the most part, has said some of the right things in public, not all. Remember, it took them days. I don't even know if they fully come out and said it as explicitly to condemn Hamas's horrific massacre on October 7th. But China, of course, is getting a lot of cheap fossil fuels at the moment. Right now, they're getting tons of crude from Iran, and they're getting, basically, Russia, someone said to me, has become a penal colony for Xi Jinping and his fossil fuels. And they're hoarding all of these fossil fuels from Russia and Iran. So China has a lot of stakes in this, as does the United States. One thing we should look forward to in this meeting, which I'll be going and covering this. Remember, they haven't spoken since the last G20 in Bali. This time we're going to San Francisco. Is this military-to-military engagement. That was absolutely cut off when Speaker Nancy Pelosi made that trip to Taiwan in August of 2022. My question is, who is Lloyd Austin's counterpart at this moment? China has yet to name someone after Li Shangfu was ousted.
Do we have a sense, Anne-Marie, of how much the geopolitics really is going to dominate? Yes, there are these other issues at play, but how much some of these escalating conflicts and the tit-for-tat that you're talking about in South Asia Sea really will be at the crux of what they're dealing with?
Well, I think it's going to be a slew of issues, right? Fentanyl is going to come up. I was looking at some of the fentanyl data and the deaths of the United States, and everyone, especially Republicans, have been pointing to China as this #1 influence when it comes to fentanyl in the United States. They have increased every year over the past decade, and I believe it was last year that it's the most we've seen, tripling the prior 3 years. So this is a huge concern, and that's showing up in our poll, right? More Americans want to see aid to the U.S. southern border than, say, potentially aid going to Ukraine. So fentanyl, obviously economic coercion, the military-to-military engagement, and what is going on right now in these two power struggles in Ukraine and in Israel.